My journey towards the first of the geckos I had to hunt started near dusk. The desert was quiet, and I was mostly alone save for the breeze that wafted across the warm sands. The wastes are always dangerous, and so I kept my eyes peeled for any signs of movement. I caught sight of a coyote up on the hill, and decided that now was as good a time as any to try out my new gun. I pulled the old Sharps carbine out and took aim, being careful to line up my shot. Right on target. I held that rifle close and marveled at it. Boy, was she a beauty. A gun like this would be perfect for gecko hunting, minus it firing only a single bullet at a time. As long as my aim stayed true, things would work out just fine. I finally arrived at the destination Frankie had mentioned, the Devil's Gullet, a large sinkhole that led down to an underground bunker complex that had long since been abandoned. Now it served as a home for critters I was going to have to exterminate. I had no idea what to expect, so I crept my way around the rim of the chasm before descending into the dark. The last thing I wanted was to be surrounded and attacked, so taking my time would be paramount for success. I came to the entrance to the abandoned caves, and after ensuring my weapons were ready, I entered. As soon as I entered, I caught sight of the first gecko, and he went down with one shot. The second gecko met the same end. The cave was dark and damp. The sounds of dripping water could be heard echoing off the walls, and somewhere in the distance I could hear the soft footfalls and low growl of geckos. I took a sip of water, readied my gun, and started into the darkness. These weren't just normal geckos, though. These were golden geckos, larger and far more dangerous. They had a bite that could take a hand clean off. I was going to have to be careful here. The last thing I wanted was to end up as gecko food. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears as I crept forward, trying hard to steady my breathing. Two more geckos down, but I knew there were more, so kept pressing forward. The one I was looking for would be bigger, much bigger, and I hoped my rifle would be strong enough to take it out with one shot. If not, then I would have to fall back on my pistol. I continued on into the cave and finally reached the bunker. Ahead, I could hear the sounds of something big, and I steeled myself for what was to come. My first shot grazed the massive creature, and I dove back to reload. The second shot hit true, right in the head. The large gecko fell to the ground in a heap, and I paused to catch my breath. That was close. Too close. If that second shot hadn't hit, I would have been dead. Avoiding death seemed to be my new calling card. After ensuring the gecko was dead, I continued on deeper into the bunker. I didn't find much at first, just a few caps and another gecko lurking further in. I climbed through the broken window into the bunker and began searching for anything I could scrounge. I needed caps. and anything of value that would help me with the rest of my hunt. I came into a large dining hall and found 2 more of the little monsters, and I let my shotgun deal with them. After they were dealt with, I got to looting the place. There wasn't much of use as the place had been picked over, and once I was satisfied with what I had found, I started back towards the surface. When I exited the cave, I found night had already crept across the Mojave, and I quickly started my way back to town. Being out in the waste after dark wasn't a good idea, as any manner of creatures could be lurking beyond the faint light of my Pip-Boy. Traveling at dark was risky, but it was better than staying in that cave. When I saw the lights of Good Springs, I felt a weight lift from my chest, and I quickly made it up to the old gas station to rest. I felt tired from the day's ordeals. A gunfight and a gecko hunt, not bad for a man who just crawled out of the grave only a few days ago. The following morning, I got moving as soon as I was up, only eating a light breakfast before heading south towards my next quarry. I could feel my strength returning with each day, and I was ready to get my second hunt underway. I stopped by Frankie's store and sold a few items I had found the day before, as well as repairing my shotgun. As soon as I had finished, I made my way towards the Good Springs water source, where I would find my next target. Frankie said that the geckos Sonny and I had killed the other day were coming from an old cigarette factory, and that the second gecko, Old Smoky, could be found there. Clearing out the nest would be good for Good Springs, and it would get me one step closer to some caps. I reached the old building and prepared to enter, not sure what to expect. Inside was a wreck, with debris and dust scattered everywhere. It had the look and feel of the old pre-war buildings, but this one had been nearly consumed by a rock slide that had taken out half the structure. I caught my first glimpse of the geckos and opened fire with my pistol, then switched to my shotgun. The Sharp's carbine was a great weapon, and I was growing to like it a lot, but in these cramped quarters, my shotgun and pistols would be my best friends. The 9mm didn't seem to be doing much, so I stuck with the larger caliber weapons. I moved further in and started taking out the geckos one by one. These were easy compared to the golden geckos I faced the day before, but that didn't mean I was going to take it easy. At the end of one of the hallways, I came across a dead man. He was a gecko hunter from the looks of it, one that got a little too cocky, and it reminded me to keep my wits about. Geckos aren't the scariest creatures in the wastes, but they could still tear you apart in large numbers. I searched through the few ammo boxes in the body before moving on. I found a few things of note, but nothing more than loot to sell. I continued exploring the dilapidated old ruins while slowly whittling down the number of geckos and grabbing what loot I could find. Finally, I started making my way down to the lower levels. I found more geckos, but little else. I climbed an old metal staircase to an office above, and there I took out another. The next one was much larger, and thinking that this was Old Smoky, I pulled out the Sharp's rifle and fired. My shot missed, and the gecko gave me 2 good bites on my arm before I was able to put it down. Thankfully, my armor had protected me, but I would need to disinfect the wound before long. I searched the little office and found an old terminal. On it was a short entry written by some men who tried to get the old cigarette machines up and running again, only to be run off by the geckos. There wasn't much here, so I salvaged what I could and made my way back down the stairs. I found more geckos in the back of the factory floor and started taking them out one at a time, trying to draw them into my kill zone. None of them were big enough to be Old Smoky, and I hear growls in the next room. I readied my rifle and prepared to enter. As soon as the door opened, I saw him. My reflexes kicked in, and the next thing I knew, a bullet had left my rifle and went hurtling through the gecko's massive head. I took the last baby gecko down with my pistol, and then, finally, it was over. I took a closer look at the carcass to make sure it was dead. 2 down, only 1 to go. The bounty on these geckos was as good as mine. Once I was satisfied with the kill, I quickly gathered anything of value. Once again, the loot was sparse, but I still managed to scrounge up a couple pistols to sell, along with some odds and ends. I exited the old cigarette factory with some more to sell, a few more caps in my pocket, and another target of my hunt down. As I emerged from the darkness of the ruins, I was stunned by the bright sunlight and the dry heat of the desert. I was faced with a choice now: continue south in the direction of Prim, a town I needed to visit eventually anyway, or head back to Good Springs for the night. I usually play things safe, but I was feeling daring, and I didn't like the idea of heading all the way back, only to have to walk the same path the next day. So with my mind made up, I started off south towards Prim, and the last of my hunts. The desert heat beat down upon me as I made my way across the foothills overlooking the broken highway. The last gecko, Firetooth, was located in an old mining cavern long abandoned. Frankie had warned me about this one, saying I need to be real careful as there were rumors of geckos that breathed fire. I had laughed it off at first, chalking it up to some waster's imagination turning into a rumor. Now that I was making my way there, I wasn't as confident any longer. I'd seen some strange things in the wastes, and a fire-breathing gecko wasn't too far out of the realm of possibility. As I continued through the foothills, I came across a small trailer that seemed out of place, so I ran up to take a look. Inside, it was empty, except for a few still working pieces of radio equipment. There wasn't much to loot, so I continued on south towards Prim. Before I even got out of view of the little trailer, I caught sight of another point of interest. I made my way up the cliffs to find an old waste disposal site, not exactly what I had in mind, and considering I didn't have any protection from rads, I decided to leave the place be. It was getting late in the day, and I wasn't sure if I could make it to Prim before sundown, so instead of continuing on, I started back towards the trailer to stay the night. It seemed safe enough, at least better than lying out on the open ground. It sure wasn't comfortable, but I was used to that, and soon I felt my eyes close and my mind slip away into a dreamless sleep. Unfortunately, that didn't last. I awoke to the sound of someone shouting and looked up to find the bodies of 2 people now in the trailer. They were chem addicts from the looks of it, only they weren't the voice I heard. Outside was a group of raiders, and I opened fire as soon as I saw them. The fight was over as quickly as it had begun, and now all I was left with was the silence of the desert. I must have been more tired than I thought if I had missed 2 drugged-up wasters stumbling into the trailer. Once again, luck had saved me, but I knew I couldn't count on her all the time. I took what I could from their bodies and started off towards the old mine. The raiders had some decent loot on them, and now I was loaded down with quite a few things to sell. So, instead of heading straight after the last gecko, I decided to make my way to Prim first and try to sell off some of what I had to lighten my load. The walk to Prim was quiet and short, with only a few geckos harassing me along the way. I found Firetooth Cavern but continued on, knowing it would be better to sell what I had and free up some space in my pack before making my way in, or so I thought. As I approached, though, I noticed something was wrong. It was quiet, and as I finally reached the town, a soldier from the NCR approached me.
Hey, where the hell do you think you're going? Prim is off limits.
Off limits? Why is that? I asked.
Some convicts from the prison up the road have taken over the town. Everyone inside is either dead or in hiding. What's more, there are 2 tribes of raiders causing trouble in this area as well. You'd be safer heading back up to Good Springs.
More powder gangers, I reckon. So how come you all aren't fighting them off? Isn't that what the NCR is supposed to do?
We'd love to, but they don't fall under NCR jurisdiction. Even if they did, we're in no shape to protect them.
Why not?
We don't have the equipment to take out the convicts. And even if we did, we need some extra hands for backup. You should talk to Lieutenant Hayes. He's in a tent down the road. Just stay on the west side of the overpass if you don't want to get shot.
Well, I suppose that put an end to my idea of selling my things. Prim was locked down pretty tight, and with no other recourse, I decided to make my way back to the old mine and kill the final gecko.
Morning.
I readied my weapons and entered. Inside, I found a vast network of dark, musty caves that twisted and turned back upon one another. I was immediately welcomed by geckos, which I dealt with one by one. My rifle was strong enough to take one down in a single shot, but in such close quarters I also found myself relying on my pistol and shotgun as well. Finally, I came across the largest of the bunch, and I knew this had to be Firetooth. I took aim and fired. The bullet hit, but the creature advanced on me with frightening speed. I backed away, and in my panic, my second shot went wide, and the gecko was on me in an instant. I reloaded a third shot, but just as I was about to pull the trigger, the gecko vomited forth a stream of fire from its mouth. Thankfully, I was able to move out of the way, but it still hit my arm, setting it ablaze and forcing me back. The cave was too small for the massive monster to climb through, and as he struggled, I loaded up another shot, and this time, my aim was true. The creature went down in a heap, and the cave went quiet again. I made sure my singed clothing was no longer burning before making my way cautiously towards the body of Firetooth. As I stared at the massive body of the fire-breathing gecko, I realized that my hunt was finally over. I had taken all 3 geckos down and I was still alive. Not bad. I gathered what I could and started out of the cave, not caring if any other creatures remained behind. I killed the one I needed to, and it was time to get out while I still could. There was no shame in moving on from a fight. It was better to live to fight another day. As soon as I left the old mine, I started back towards Frankie's to collect my reward. It was a quiet walk back with nothing of note occurring, thankfully. The past 2 days had been enough excitement for me, and I was happy to be finished with my hunt. As soon as I entered, I got straight to business and told Frankie all the geckos were dead. He paid me the reward, and then offered me a second job, one that would be much tougher, involving a huge rad scorpion queen known as Bertha. Sounded like she had been causing all sorts of havoc for the NCR troops in the area, so I accepted the job. I wasn't going after her right now, though. I needed some rest and to restock on supplies, so I headed back to Good Springs to resupply and say goodbye to the folk there. I knew I wouldn't be coming back for some time, not until I finished tracking down the man who shot me, and I had no idea how long that would take. I sold all I could and purchased a few things, including a whole lot of ammo. Then I said my goodbyes to Rico, Trudy, and Sonny before heading out of town. I had to make a choice, either head to Prim again or see if those men made their way to Quarry Junction instead. I remembered Trudy saying the way past the quarry was closed, and I had heard rumors of death claws in the area, so I made my choice and started south for Prim.